If it were you, could you handle living in a town where running errands means crossing a border checkpoint just to get out of your neighborhood? Or could you handle a place where the neighbors down underground have been there for centuries, outnumbering the living above ground by thousands to one? This video isn't just a list of the 10 weirdest towns in the US. It's the story of how tiny places turn weirdness into identity, and identity into a way of life. And if you stick around to the end, you'll meet a town that was created almost like an advertising idea, but somehow became so real that kids believe it's the real thing. Let's go, starting at number 10. Number 10, Point Roberts, Washington. Number 10 is Point Roberts, Washington, and it feels like America got clipped by a pair of scissors. You can wake up in the United States and realize the closest everything is Canada. If you want to drive to the rest of Washington state, you usually have to leave the US, enter Canada, then re-enter the US again. 2 border checks just to run errands. Your GPS looks confident, but your life does not. Around here, did you grab your keys? Turns into, did you grab your passport? This peninsula exists because the border at the 49th parallel slices off the tip of land and labels it Washington anyway. Geographers call it a pene exclave. About 1,100 people live here, which makes the business scene feel like a magic trick. Point Roberts has more gas pumps and package pickup counters than a town this size should. Canadian day trippers cross over to fill up, grab parcels shipped into a US address, and head back. Cashiers take Canadian dollars like it is pocket change. When travel slows or trade drama flares up, the whole place feels it. It has an older, shadowy reputation, too. For years, it was treated like a borderland, no man's land, with smuggling stories that stuck to the fog. Even now, the checkpoint is basically the town square. Then COVID hit, the border closed, the cross-border flow died, and Point Roberts felt unplugged. A passenger-only ferry became a lifeline for a while, and locals leaned on the marina and small airstrip like emergency exits. Stand by Boundary Monument Number 1, a marker in the grass, and it lands. Most towns are built around a main street. This one is built around an invisible line and the people guarding it. Could you live somewhere that is American on paper but runs on a gate that can swing shut at any time? The next town takes weird and weaponizes it. Number 9, Cut and Shoot, Texas. Number 9 is Cut and Shoot, Texas, and it proves a town can be completely normal and still sound like a crime headline. It sits in Montgomery County, about 6 miles east of Conroe and roughly 40 miles north of Houston. Today it is small, around 1,100 people, about 2.7 square miles. The kind of place you could blink and miss. But then you see the sign, Cut and Shoot, and your brain goes, wait, what happened here? Here is the weird part. The name did not come from a marketing team. It came from a community argument in 1912 that got so heated, people later described it like a cutting and shooting scrape. There are a few versions of what they were fighting over. One story says it was the design of a church bell tower. Another says it was who had the right to preach. Another points to land disputes tied to the church community. Same vibe either way. A small town disagreement that swelled until it felt bigger than the building. And then the moment that sticks in local history. A kid around 8 years old supposedly blurted out something like, "I am going to cut around the corner and shoot through the bushes." Not a plan. Just a kid talking wild in a room full of adults, acting worse than kids. The punchline is that nobody actually cut anyone. Nobody actually shot anyone. But the phrase had legs. It became a nickname. Then it leaked into official talk. Later, people even used it in legal testimony because they did not know what else to call the area. That place where the cutting and shooting talk happened. And the name just stayed. By 1969, the town incorporated. So yes, Cut and Shoot is not a joke. It is a real dot on the map with real elections, real neighbors, real mail. Which is kind of perfect, right? A place built on a near-nothing argument that turned into a forever identity. Imagine living somewhere where your address sounds dangerous, but your biggest daily threat is probably traffic on the way to Houston. Would you lean into the legend or spend your whole life explaining it was mostly just people arguing about church business? Number 8. Roswell, New Mexico. Number 8 is Roswell, New Mexico, the only town I can think of that turned a one-day headline into a lifelong identity. Let's open the file. Exhibit A, July 1947. The local Army airfield drops a statement that basically says, "We got a flying disc." For one hot minute, the world leans in. Then it gets walked back fast, replaced with, "Actually, it was a weather balloon." If you are wondering how a myth is born, that is the spark. Exhibit B, paperwork, not vibes. The FBI has a teletype from that same day describing the disc as something that looked like a high-altitude weather balloon. That is the part nobody puts on a souvenir mug, because it is boring, and boring is dangerous to a legend. Exhibit C, the official explanation. The U.S. Air Force later ties it to Project Mogul, a secret Cold War balloon program meant to sniff out nuclear test signals. In other words, not aliens, just humans doing human things, hiding stuff, then acting surprised when people fill in the blanks. Now here is what makes Roswell truly weird. Exhibit D. The town builds an entire economy on the argument. There is the International UFO Museum and Research Center, opened in 1991. Right in town, like a permanent case file you can walk through. Exhibit E. The festival numbers. The city reported the 2023 UFO Festival brought about 3,370 visitors and around $510,000 in direct economic impact. Another year, officials have talked about the festival bringing in more than $2 million. Belief is optional. The cash register is not. Walk downtown and you will see alien streetlights staring at you. You can eat at a McDonald's shaped like a UFO. Even the police leaned in with a patch that says, "Protect and serve those that land here." So what is Roswell really? A mystery, a brand, a town that figured out you do not need answers to survive. You just need a story people will drive for. Number 7, Metropolis, Illinois. Number 7 is Metropolis, Illinois. And the weird thing here is simple. The most famous person in town is not a person, it is Superman. Picture this, you are driving through southern Illinois expecting a quiet river town, and then you hit Superman Square, and there he is. A 15-foot statue of Superman standing like he is guarding the whole place. It is not tucked away in some theme park, it is right there in the middle of town, like this is totally normal and you're the strange one for being surprised. Metropolis is small, around 6,500 people, but it decided a long time ago that small was not a brand. So it leaned into something bigger than life. DC Comics even called Metropolis, Illinois, the home of Superman back in 1972, and the town ran with it, hard. Now the town is basically a real-life set. There is the Super Museum, which opened in the early 1990s, packed with Superman memorabilia like a pop culture time capsule. You can take a photo with Superman, then walk a few steps and find a Lois Lane statue. One minute you are buying souvenirs, the next you are standing on an ordinary street thinking, wait, people actually live here. And then every summer, it levels up. The Superman celebration has been running since 1979. Cosplayers show up, guests show up, the sidewalks fill up. Some sources say the event can pull tens of thousands of visitors, which is wild when you remember the town itself is only a few thousand residents. Imagine your quiet hometown turning into a mini Comic-Con for a weekend, then going back to normal on Monday morning. Here is what makes that feel oddly deep. Metropolis tried to dream even bigger at times, with big plans around the Superman brand that never fully happened. But the town kept the faith anyway. It chose to be a little unreal on purpose, like that is how you survive. And right nearby, you have Fort Massac, a real historic frontier site on the Ohio River. So you can go from French-era history to superhero mythology in the same afternoon. If you lived here, would you find it charming? Or would it feel like your hometown is permanently in costume? Number 6, Casey, Illinois. Number 6 is Casey, Illinois. And I swear this town feels like someone gave a small place a giant remote and said, "Turn the size up." Here is the challenge. You hop off of Interstate 70 at exit 129, and within about 3 miles you can play a real-life scavenger hunt for world records. Not museums, not roller coasters, just everyday objects that got blown up to absurd size. Stop 1. The mailbox. Casey has the world's largest mailbox, and it is not a cute, oversized prop. Guinness lists its volume at 162.63 cubic meters. You can literally stand inside it. Imagine mailing a letter and feeling like you are dropping it into a storage unit. Stop 2. Right by City Hall, there is the world's largest rocking chair. It is about 17.09 meters tall and nearly 10 meters wide. It looks like a porch chair that got hit by a superhero growth ray. You don't sit in it, you witness it. Stop 3, the pitchfork. Guinness says the world's largest pitchfork is 18.65 meters long. It is parked outside a restaurant like it is guarding the menu. The message is clear: eat here or get gently threatened. By farm equipment the size of a building. And then there is the wind chime. This one is pure comedy and a little haunting. The longest tube is 12.8 meters and the chimes hang nearly 15 meters above the ground. When the wind hits it, it is like the town is ringing a bell for no reason at all, just because it can. This all traces back to one guy, Jim Bolin, who started building big stuff and basically didn't stop. Now Casey has a stack of Guinness world's largest records. It is like the town decided its economic plan was simple: make people pull over, make them smile, make them take photos, and it works. Yeah, you come for one giant object, then you are walking around town like you are collecting achievements. So here is the real question. If you lived in Casey, would you be proud? Or would you get tired of explaining why your hometown has a mailbox bigger than some apartments? Number 5, Oatman, Arizona. You don't arrive in Oatman, Arizona, you get stopped by it. You roll in on old Route 66 expecting a cute desert stop. Then a burro steps into the road like it owns the asphalt. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't blink. It just stands there, ears up, judging your life choices while your car idles in the heat. Behind it, 2 more wander over like they heard there's free snacks in town. And here's the part people don't expect. Those donkeys aren't a gimmick. They're tied to the land. They're part of a wild burro herd in the Black Mountains, descendants of pack animals miners and early settlers used back in the 1860s. When the mining days faded, a lot of animals were turned loose, and somehow Oatman ended up sharing the streets with history. Walk a few steps and it gets even stranger. Someone hands you burro biscuits. Like this is normal, and you realize the town has to manage tourists and animals at the same time. Sometimes you'll even see a burro with a little "do not feed me" message, like a celebrity trying to avoid fans. Then, right when you think you've figured out the vibe, the street turns into a stage. Around the afternoon, there are Old West gunfight shows in the road. It's theater, it's loud, it's goofy, and the donkeys still act like they're the real mayors. Oatman wasn't always a joke on the highway. Gold discoveries in the early 1900s pulled in huge crowds, and the town once swelled into the thousands, even brushing the 10,000 range before the mine slowed and wartime shutdowns hit. Now only around 100 people live here full-time, and the rest of the population changes by the hour. Step into the Oatman Hotel and look up. The ceiling is layered with signed $1 bills, an old tradition from miners leaving their mark and promising they'd return. Add the ghost stories. Add the Hollywood brag that Clark Gable and Carol Lombard stopped here in 1939, and suddenly it feels like the whole town is a scrapbook that refuses to close. So yeah, Oatman is weird, not because it's pretending, because it's still living in the middle of its own legend. Number 4, Salem, Massachusetts. Number 4 is Salem, Massachusetts. And the weird part is that it lives 2 completely different lives in the same few blocks. In Salem, you can have a normal Tuesday with about 45,000 residents, and then October shows up and the city basically shapeshifts. In October 2024, Salem logged about 1,040,600 visitors, and Halloween Day alone hit 87,351. The next year, Halloween Day climbed again to around 96,600, with roughly 1.1 million unique visitors downtown across the month. That's not a busy season, that's a temporary takeover. Imagine trying to grab groceries while your town turns into a month-long costume parade. Now flip the postcard, walk a few minutes away from the street performers and the witch hats, and you hit something quiet. The Salem witch trials were real and ugly. More than 200 people were accused, 30 were convicted, 19 were executed. And no, despite what people still say, it wasn't burnings at the stake. Salem has a memorial that names the victims, and it doesn't feel like a tourist stop when you're standing there. It feels like the temperature drops. Then Salem pulls another trick. For years, people pointed at Gallows Hill like it was the final spot. But in 2016, researchers said the best match for the actual execution site was Proctor's Ledge. Even the tragedy has a plot twist, like the city won't let you stand in the right place without earning it, and if you think Salem is only witches, it isn't. There's the harbor story too. Salem Maritime is a National Park Service site, created in 1938 as the first national historic site in the country, back when Salem was a global trading port. Then you've got the Peabody Essex Museum, rooted in 1799, born from sailors and captains collecting strange objects from faraway places, like an early cabinet of curiosities. So yes, Salem is weird, not because it's spooky, because it can sell you magic with one hand and quietly hold a heavy history with the other. If you came here, which Salem would you be looking for? The loud one or the one that makes you lower your voice without thinking? Number 3, Colma, California. Number 3 is Colma, California, and it's the only place I know where the population count depends on which direction you're looking. Above ground, Colma has about 1,509 living residents. Underground, it has around 1.5 million souls spread across 17 cemeteries plus a pet cemetery. The town literally calls itself the City of Souls, and the motto is almost a wink. It's great to be alive in Colma. Here's how that happened, because it's not an accident. San Francisco ran out of patience for cemeteries. In 1900, the city banned new burials. By 1914, it started issuing eviction notices, telling cemeteries to move the bodies and headstones out. The legal fights dragged on, but by 1937, the push was basically settled. And by the early 1940s, the big relocations were rolling. And Colma, just south of the city, became the place where San Francisco's dead moved when the living needed the space. There's a detail that hits harder when you picture it. If families didn't pay the relocation fee, Colma says it was $10, many remains were reburied in mass graves. So this quiet little town is also a giant storage unit for history, grief, and city planning. Now here's the truly weird part. Colma is tiny, about 2.2 square miles, and roughly 3/4 of it is cemetery land. But it's not frozen in time. You can drive past headstones, then immediately hit an auto row or a Home Depot. KQED even describes moments where you're near a cemetery and you can hear something like, "Your car is ready to be serviced," over a loudspeaker. That mix is surreal. Silence, then retail. Mourning, then receipts. And yes, you have famous neighbors down there. Joe DiMaggio, William Randolph Hearst, Wyatt Earp. In Colma, celebrity is an underground thing. If you spent an afternoon here, you'd probably notice yourself lowering your voice without thinking. Then, 5 minutes later, you're back in traffic like the world never paused. Colma doesn't feel scary. It feels like a reminder you can't dodge. Cities keep moving and somebody has to make room. Number 2, Lajitas, Texas. Number 2 is Lajitas, Texas, and the best way to start this story is election night. Picture a tiny desert town in the Big Bend region sitting above the Rio Grande, where the heat can feel personal and the nearest big city is basically a rumor. Now imagine the locals holding an election, and the winner is a goat. Yup. Lajitas became famous for Clay Henry, a goat that was elected mayor back in 1986. It sounds like a joke, and it is a joke, but it is also a perfect summary of the place. Out here, you either lean into the weird or the desert wins. Now rewind 100 years, because Lajitas wasn't always a punchline. Around 1900, it was designated a substation port of entry because people were crossing the river here at a spot called San Carlos Ford. By 1912, it had a store, a saloon, a custom house, and even a school with about 50 students. In the middle of nowhere, it was a real border town doing real border town things. Then the wheels came off. When the nearby quicksilver mining faded, Lajitas shrank so hard that at one point the population dropped to 4 people. 4, that's not a town, that's a group chat. And then it did something even stranger. It reinvented itself as a resort. By the mid-1980s, it had the full package: hotel, restaurant, golf course, RV park, even an airstrip. A luxury bubble dropped into the desert between Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. A place Texas parks and wildlife basically calls the other side of nowhere. It even became a film set. One producer joked it was one of the few places left where you can shoot 360 degrees and not catch modern life in the background. Just sky, rock, river, and silence. And if you want one more twist, the whole town and about 25,000 acres around it were actually sold at auction in 2000. Because of course they were. So yeah, Lajitas is weird. A border post turned near ghost town turned resort with a goat mayor as the mascot. Out here, seriousness and absurdity share the same dusty road. Number 1. North Pole, Alaska. Number 1 is North Pole, Alaska, and the weird part starts with a deadline. Every December, parents everywhere are scrambling, like it's tax season, except the paperwork is glitter and a kid's wish list. And somehow a tiny town near Fairbanks becomes part of the plan. Not the real North Pole, of course, just a real town that decided to live inside the idea of it. Here's the twist most people don't know. North Pole didn't get its name from geography. In 1952, developers bought land and renamed the place North Pole, hoping it would attract a toy manufacturer. A year later, it incorporated as a city. So yeah, this whole town is basically a marketing strategy that became permanent. And then it committed. Streets have names like Santa Claus Lane, St. Nicholas Drive, Snowman Lane, Kris Kringle Drive. The light poles look like candy canes year-round. You can drive through in July and still feel like someone is about to hand you hot cocoa. The center of gravity is the Santa Claus house. It's been part of the town's identity since the early days, and they sell letters from Santa as a tradition going back to 1952. They even claim they've sent nearly 2 million of them over the years. Out front, there's a giant Santa statue that looks like it's been standing there long enough to have its own fan club. Now zoom out one more layer because it gets funnier. USPS also plays along. They run a Greetings from the North Pole program so kids can get a reply with a North Pole postmark. The hilarious part is the mail actually routes through the postmaster in Anchorage. It's like the magic is real, but it has a forwarding address. And if you want the purest this town is a set moment, there's even a Christmas in Ice Park nearby, built with hundreds of tons of ice with things like an ice maze and slides. In Alaska, even the holiday decorations can freeze solid. So North Pole is weird in the most American way. It wasn't born from myth, it was built on purpose. And somehow it still works. Because once a place convinces the world to send it letters, it kind of becomes real, whether the map agrees or not. And that's the thing about the weirdest towns in the U.S. They're not weird because someone painted a sign or sold a souvenir. They're weird because the place and the people made a deal with a story and kept paying the price. A border that turns errands into an international trip. A whole town built around giant objects. A city of souls. A desert resort that elected a goat. And a North Pole that was literally designed to feel real. So if you had to choose one, which town could you actually live in? And which one would your brain tap out after one night?